You.
The audio is
now.
not on. Yeah. Hey, Maurice.
Hey, Maurice.
Hey,
All right. Let me just do a quick round of introductions to get us all kind of on the record. I'm Tyler. I'm the chair. Nice to see you all again. Welcome to our
Thank you.
our newest member and our almost
About
newest
to
member.
be members.
Yeah, thank you. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Linda Holman. I've been off and on the park board for about 30 years, and now I'm on.
Mike Vettersnack. I was on the park board a long time ago and with Linda
Oh, nice.
and
We were community services.
yeah,
Oh, great. Just doing introductions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maurice. Hi, my name is Maurice Jones. I am a resident of Lake Forest Park for the last almost 30 years.
great. Good to have you here.
Corey,
Corey.
with the city of Lake Forest Park, and with the city for 11 years.
Is it me? Yeah, Steve. Been living in the city for 5 years. During COVID or. Yeah, my name is Dr. Anderson. I'm a business owner here in Lake Forest Park. You know which business? You know what it is.
And where's what's the status of your role on the Parks Board?
Hopefully a soon to be member on the Parks Board as a business owner in LFP.
Okay, and I think you're pending approval of the next council meeting, is that right?
March 12th.
Okay, great. Okay, good. All right, well, here we are. And we have one more member, right?
Amy.
Amy is not here right now. She can drive away.
No, she said she could.
Oh, she's not.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, catching on. So the first thing we do in these meetings is look through our agenda and validate that that's what we all agree we're going to talk about. So take a look. Corey very nicely put it together and provided us copies. Hopefully, Maurice, you got a copy online also.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think about it. If you have any updates or changes. Usually the nice other category at the end of section 5, some flexibility. I'll talk about anything. To adopt this, we need it to be moved, the adoption be moved and seconded, then we vote.
I'll move that we adopt it.
Great. I'll second. Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda as prepared?
Right.
Indicate.
right.
Great, okay, passes, thanks. The next step is to look at the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which Corey very nicely typed up and attached to the agenda. Please take a look at that. A reminder, if you're here, you're eligible to vote. Well, I mean, you're not, sorry. But you don't have to have been at that meeting, although it looks like we all, well, yeah, even our newest member can vote to approve. Oh, we are missing, just a side note, we are missing Matt as our council representative. He is not here yet. He's the one who might call in, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mid-flight, I think, right?
Right.
So Corey, I'm noticing here that we talked about the last meeting, we talked about the youth advisory positions. And I'm still working on that.
Okay, yeah, we can chat about that in the other again.
That's good. Okay.
So, right?
To move this along, we need a motion to approve it in a second also.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the January meeting.
Great. We'll see. All right, now we can vote on it. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, please indicate. It's like everybody, thank you very much. Any opposed? Sorry, I didn't ask that the last time. But I got everybody saying yes, so that works out great. All right, next on the agenda is the actual business part of the agenda. So we'll get to that. First thing on the list is the park board meeting time and day. That is to just look one more time at now that we have some new members joining and thinking about when we want to meet. I think it has changed over the years, of course. I think the most recent change that I remember was we had a couple meetings where we met on I think like a Thursday afternoon or a Friday midday, like when we went to visit the Shoreline Historic Museum. And I think that actually, and some of those alternative times ended up working out pretty well for other folks, so I wanted to bring it up. Think about when we can actually meet. What works for you, how we talk about that, what works for Corey, and who for the city, and I suppose Matt also, similar council representative.
Yeah, it sort of sounded like maybe Thursday, Thursdays and earlier in the afternoon might be a better time than 7 PM on Tuesdays.
Yes,
Thursday sounds good.
Okay, third, what,
like some mid to late afternoon, something like that.
Yeah, that's what we're here to chat about. Council meetings are the second and fourth Thursdays. And there is a budget meeting on the third one. But
is it,
those meetings start at 7 PM. So. With an exception of maybe a work session starting at.
oh, there's Maurice again. Maurice, we're moving to the agenda item where we're talking about when we should meet.
Okay,
So we're considering alternatives to this time. Currently under, or at least general discussion is whether Thursday work better for folks. Maybe earlier in the day. Earlier than now. But I'm not, are we thinking mid to late afternoon is what you were suggesting?
Threw
Okay.
that out, yeah,
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I think you were the only one that really had a challenge, right? You were saying work was a challenge for, since at work day.
Right, yeah, it's usually a day that I try to be at work.
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays are the main day, and then Wednesday and Thursday the other. Say, but I can head home a little early those days, so I don't think I could do particularly early in the day. Like 3, 4.
That would be
something
perfect.
there would be maybe a little easier. Later the better for me.
Do you want to shoot for 4 and then if?
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
we adjust meetings as needed, so if we know like. We don't have a quorum. We can adjust as needed, but. I think at 4 PM.
Yeah.
Thursday sounds,
so be the fourth Thursday.
well, that's,
That's the next question.
yeah,
So can I just ask for our newest members, does that fit with your timing also?
That sounds good.
Okay.
I can
How about
make
you?
that.
Yeah, it'll be a pretty clear.
Right,
Maurice, does 4 PM on Thursdays sound okay?
yeah. Thursday's a good days for me, so yeah.
So good to check with Amy and Matt. Suppose we should kind of vet this idea.
Yeah.
Too.
How about I'll send an email out
Okay.
asking what 4 PM Thursday works best for everyone.
Okay.
See what we
Right.
come up with. There's nothing city related on the first Thursday. So maybe that would just be us moving later. So,
Corey, that kind of makes for a long day for you because you're at the city council meetings all the time, aren't you?
well, I'm here right now.
Yeah, better than 7 PM was, yeah.
Well, the city council meetings are on Thursday nights, right?
Yeah, but those are 7 PM.
Okay.
And you just stay through.
No, I usually go hang out first for. Some body, come back. So maybe we can aim for that first Thursday.
Sure.
And
sounds good.
okay.
To get together next week.
Yeah, not next week.
So that would that mean moving the essentially
March,
March meeting to April, first week of April?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. And on the calendar, we're just bumping things out a week, but
I
it
think,
looks like we skip March. But
yeah, so it'd be April 2nd. Would be our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Be great.
And the first Thursday doesn't really conflict with any holidays that I can think of, or that. Yeah, should be okay.
Great.
Okay, we'll keep moving forward in that direction.
Plan for next meeting for April 2nd. I'll confirm. Amy said that her schedule just moves around anyway, so she'll try to be there when she can. But yeah, we'll just confirm with Matt, see what he says, and
Great.
thanks.
All right, well, thanks for that, everybody. I think that will make for us a little more convenience for a lot of us.
And that won't be a real problem for you.
I don't think so. I guess we'll try it for a while. And
Okay,
see
so
how
that's-
see how it all works out. Yeah. Next on the agenda, if we're okay to move on. That was pretty talked through. Next on the agenda is the Blue Heron Park project update. Guessing that's with you.
It's with me.
Awesome.
Well, our last work party was a small but mighty group of people, and we're still basically just primarily doing cleanup.
Okay.
Because there's so much to do over there. So we've kind of sectioned off the park into various areas. We're focusing on two of the areas that are actually where we're going to be able to plant sooner than later.
Okay.
And tomorrow I'm having a Zoom meeting with a woman who is a consultant. She does park restorations, and she's worked with the Stewardship Foundation. So she and I are gonna get together and talk and see if there's any role that she could play in this, development. Cause there's a lot of issues that are tangled up, like there's all this black locust trees that have to come out. Has to be done by a company that knows how to do it. It can't be Public Works. It can't just be any arborist. They have to know what they're doing and know how to inoculate all that.
So root system stuff, right? Is that what I mean? Okay.
Yeah. So 5 Acre Woods has a lot of problems also, and they're looking to hire someone. So it's possible we may be able to connect and make it all one thing that would smooth it out. And then we have irrigation to think about and all kinds of other things. But I think I may have mentioned at our last meeting that, I've got a nice grant from King County. So that's going to be really helpful.
Cool.
To get that going. And we've got the Interact kids, the Climate Action kids from Shorecrest, and now the environmental kid group from Shorecrest. Got a lot of kids involved, and that's really nice, to have. So we're just moving ahead as we go.
Okay, that sounds great.
And
Thanks
you
for
guys are
that.
all welcome to come on the second Saturday.
All right, second Saturday. Put it on your calendar.
We got one bid back for the locust, and I don't think it's correct, so
We did what?
Mac got one bid for the removal of the black.
Oh, he did?
locusts. Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't think it's what we need.
No, the main stuff is along the stream.
Yeah.
It's not in the bed has got like one or two things that John thinks he can take out himself, but I told him. But it's just a process that's been ignored for so long, and it's just but now I think I mentioned before, I've got that artist who was one of the artists for the hub wall project, who's gonna work with us on signage, and we're actually looking ahead to doing some art in the park too at some
Oh,
point. So,
fantastic.
yeah, just gonna bring it, revitalize that whole area and really make it what it should be. But it's gonna be about a good couple of years before we get it close to what we want.
Is it 9 AM?
Hmm?
Or are they at 9?
I think what?
The work
The
parties.
work parties.
9 to noon. Mhm.
All right, any other questions about that one? Great, thank you for your work on that. I've seen it before and it takes a lot of work. So And organizing people is
Yes, it is.
a fun challenge. Next on the agenda is the Lakefront Park project updates and history sign project. You want to take the lead on that? Or?
I don't have an update.
Okay.
I will say the hearing is started today and it will probably be a while, so. That's that.
I did not have a chance to join the hearing at all. How far did it get today?
Not very far.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, we only made it to about like 3 and adjourned for the day. We're picking back up 9 AM tomorrow. Only one of our speakers spoke today. So it'll be long.
So it's gonna go on every day?
Yeah, we'll see what tomorrow comes and everything. Hopefully we won't be delayed too long, but
How many people at the city show, or just citizens?
it was held in the council chambers. There's only one person who
Oh.
attended. There's people online on Zoom.
Yeah, I
watching,
jumped online for a few minutes.
but yeah, I don't know how many were on. Yeah, so we can continue with the sign project.
Okay.
Sounds
Sounds good.
I don't know if y'all picked out pictures yet, or I tabbed the book a little bit. I think this Lake Haven book also,
It was great.
yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, it's in the I'll screen share.
It was one of the
Good
attachments.
email. Yeah, it's
Wasn't like the guy in the
the real estate agent made it.
and he lived over there too?
Yeah, do you want-
No, originally he put the property
okay.
on.
This is from the
Yeah,
sales.
and then it went.
There was like eyes in it, like I was.
There's some great photos
Yeah.
right there.
Someone was living.
Yeah, but it sounded like, he was, it
Beautiful.
was first person.
I was just
So
looking
I
at
thought
this.
the person writing it had
That
actually.
would be a great.
I don't.
Yeah, I like the entrance sign.
So none of your scouts are interested.
Not yet. We're working on. I mean, they have to pick their own project. That's sort of how that works.
Sure. Yeah, I don't.
Can't fast track Eagle Scout. If they're open to it, I can make recommendations.
So here's the
Linda.
Linda. Got this.
Okay.
Oh,
You're gonna put on screen, great. And we're looking for a dozen at
Yeah,
most
yeah,
to scatter around the park.
yeah, there'd be
Yeah.
some. We'll get to like some history. There'll be some like verbiage on there, but picking the pictures out first and then.
sure.
As I look at these pictures, maybe it's just a natural human reaction. I'm drawn to the water pictures.
Yeah, 'cause it gives it the sense.
Right. Yeah. And it
Like-
lets you know that it's there.
I think this, like, the 3 of these, like, maybe we could, one sign could host multiple.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That'd be
Yeah,
good.
some of it is like tying it back to some of these stories that you want to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought the story of like the Gates piece of this was really interesting. Like, what was this, like 4 generations ago? Like, it's all in that book there. It's just really interesting about how like lived there. And there's also a piece where it seems like they created like an informal network of teachers would live on the property. And then when a teacher left, another teacher would go in.
Oh,
And I guess the guy who wrote the book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, like lived there for a little bit. And I wonder if that would help with some of the, like choosing of the pictures, if we chose the stories that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, I think so too. They should all be connected.
I did like the Lake Forest Park.
Yeah, like maybe,
Entrance signs.
Yes.
yeah, like maybe the entrance. The picture of the entrance could be
Near the
an
entrance.
exhibit in, like, in the building versus a sign out in the park too.
Just recreate this.
Or we'll try.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It goes into some of the things of like why the location was like convenient and it's still like relevant today. It's like really interesting.
That's a great picture.
Including something with the railroad
I think.
too.
it's important. I'm surprised there's not more of that on the Brew Gilman. I don't see. I've seen any pictures still. Yeah.
Yeah. I know,
You?
I've not been on the full trail.
I think I have. I don't think I've seen much.
Wow. So many good looking pictures.
You know, you showed that one picture earlier, Corey, that back when it was still, there was actually lumber floating in the water.
Mhm.
And I know a family that has a house on the water and they took those logs and used them for fill on their land
No.
and threw dump on top, dirt on top of
Yeah.
the logs. Well, those logs are rotting out now.
Yeah,
And there's dips
Oh,
in their front lawn.
hollow sections.
I even like these pictures are pretty cool to,
That's a,
maybe like this could be one exhibit.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
house of the actual, like, what was there most recently?
I'm assuming like this must be Pearl.
A lot of it, you don't have to imagine what it's like. Still, it's not.
Uh,
You know how it got, this may be a side note, how did they get the name Lake Haven?
I
Does
don't
anybody know?
know. Maybe it's something we could ask this agent. There's a
Yeah.
card. Did you have any success when?
Not yet, not yet. So I work in the Gates Foundation. And we're connected with the family's archive. So I have a question pending, but I've not gotten a response yet about like. Do you have any pictures of this? Like, that'd be great. So I'll follow up with them again this week, just see if they've made any progress. My connection point is a foundation employee who helps them with their archiving work. So it's not quite direct, but.
What's the process that you want to, like, should we be choosing and then call it down? Or what would you like to get out of tonight?
I think maybe a plan of action to come back next meeting.
Okay.
Do we want to all suggest, I know Mike, you picked out some,
Yeah, I picked out about 8, but we all have our own opinions on things, so.
I mean, I like your point earlier about like, what are we trying to say? Yeah, I think that's important to think about, like. I think that's maybe what I was saying when I saw all the water pictures, it's like, well, okay, if we're just telling the story of like the lake itself or what happened, human activity on this lake, great. But what about the buildings? What about the connection to the city?
Yeah, some of the houses back then were interesting
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And where that goes in the park, like I think there are some of the boards can be like toward the beginning of the park, and maybe they're more about the city. Or people can turn around and see the old mansion up there. Maybe can you still see it from down there? I should have not looked at that. It's got a pretty
No,
giant hedge in the way now.
I don't know, you might be able to during winter time right now, good foliage, but I don't know. I think that there were some trees along their property that might have been taken down, so you might know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's some neighboring construction, right?
Yeah.
Just down there.
So do we want to like choose themes and then pictures that go with those themes?
Yeah, we can pick,
Oh, that's a good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a really
Themes
good
are
idea.
good. Well,
so like, I'm thinking like water recreate, like recreating on water.
Thought it was really compelling, the history of those buildings, like. What those there, and just, I mean, I assume we can use. Like the Gates lineage of like, it's,
the fact of it.
yeah, I mean, it's all in that book that I thought was really interesting. How they made their like money, and I think it was like the. Sort of like peripheral with gold rush, right? Like outfitting Alaska.
Hmm.
And then, and then
I think Bill made his money.
it was not.
The original, the first bill, there's 4 of them.
Oh, really?
I only followed
Yeah.
the early ones.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. But then, like maybe the residents or like story of some of the residences there.
Mhm.
Who lived there, who occupied it. I thought that was really good.
I think the train is also an interesting, like, piece of it,
The railroad.
the railroad
Mhm.
going through the Bergamo connection. And then you said it recreating on the water, but also like industry on the water. So
How quickly they, I mean, they said like 1900, they already decimated the salmon runs and things like that, so.
Yeah, there's like, there are some photos of. Not water taxi, but some sort of. Water taxi system.
Yeah, it almost looked like a ferry. It was a
Yeah.
big boat,
Yeah. Oh, like
There's a
a,
guy.
like a tour boat.
Ski guy.
yeah. Sure, why that?
Did you buy that? The
I
library?
got it at the historical museum.
Okay,
Yeah, all of these pictures are on the website.
yeah,
Facebook.
But last time we were at the Historical Society, Jamie, is that his name, main guy? I can't remember. Anyway, if you're interested, I believe they have many copies of this book. If you're interested in your own physical
Yeah.
copy, I think they have a lot of them.
cool.
Yeah, so I have water recreation, the railroad, history of the gates, the family. History of people who have stayed on site. In the cabins.
I mean, a natural history would be interesting too. Like the connection to the preserve or the
Well, just, I think, lowering.
Yeah.
The,
lake
I
level.
was gonna say that, it mentions it there, what year that happened, because there's already gonna be sort of a theme of that.
our dogs.
Yeah, when was that? I feel like it's in every discussion. Would be 19.
I think
9
like-
or something like that. Or my time, please. Shut. I've got a fewer environmental regulations.
1916
16, I think that's just it.
were built in Ballard. Lowered at about 9 feet.
So any pictures from 1915 would be fascinating. Showing the shoreline at that point.
Yeah, nothing in here.
I think,
That'd be pretty cool. There was one that talked about the lack of shoreline.
yeah, I bookmarked. I think it might have been in here then.
Maybe that's where I saw it.
There was a picture of like pre-lowered.
Well, plus the park's gonna have a tie into that, right?
Yeah.
So it's Lake Club, it's markers.
Yeah, it's like, it is similar, but it's a little different. I don't know the difference.
Volume 2.
Yeah, I think. I think that there was like additions in there where they redacted stuff.
You know where this was?
I thought it was on 104.
Lakewood,
Looks like Creek.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we have, I'll have to dig up the Morris family, that's they lived on the preserve. They sent us some photos too. I'll send those out.
Great.
That's it.
I also noticed the Morris family submitted a lot of the photos on the shoreline historical museum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so.
Now, are we thinking about some of these photos will be inside and on display and some outside, or how's that gonna go?
I think potentially, I think the initial request is what are the ones that we want to put outside,
Okay,
right? Wasn't that and then the idea, I think the idea we kind of talked about was. If there are more that we want to talk about, there is an option to do something inside or have some rotating display or even a screen on the inside that just cycles through
Right.
a few pictures. I think that's, or maybe more pictures, if that's interesting, if we have enough.
Right.
I think most of this request is connected to the consultants who are helping us with the park as they think about like what kind of signage are we gonna have? How big is it? What's on it? What's the composure of that sign? How are they maintained? What do they look like? And then so kind of as part of that process, just thinking about what are we gonna put in the park?
Yeah, we should do an indigenous one as well. I saw one photo in there, but it'd be nice to see if there's additional.
Well, do you remember Corey? I felt like Amber had some themes that she was going through. In that, maybe you remember.
Yeah,
There were some themes that she had in the content. I just can't remember what they are though. And that might inform some of the themes of the science.
yes.
Info.
Why it's not word.
I guess I feel well.
What?
It's about the way.
Wow, at least it's a motor car.
There you go. $30. Huh?
I think maybe something about like this fish. There's a picture of two people fishing.
Yeah, maybe the themes we pick are based on the pictures available.
Yeah.
There was a number of pictures in there about the LFP school dating back to 1938. There's a big school, but not very many kids come to it.
Where was it? Did you ever get? I didn't actually figure that out.
Couldn't figure it out either. It's up on a hill somewhere. It's like this Bill Rose shingle mill. I think that was up on off of 35th and 197th. I'm trying to picture that like somewhere north of 104, up towards Briar or something. This little shingle mill, it has shingles all around it.
I know it's around. And how many signs did we come up with? Was it, it was 12 at the very most, I thought it was even,
Yeah,
For 6.
yeah, kind of.
I think it was like 8,
Okay.
it's kind of like the
Okay,
max. Okay.
but we're thinking multiple pictures on each sign potentially, and maybe, but. Maybe a little hard to mix the themes on that, on each sign, but.
Yeah, and their point was like, basically, don't go too much, think about yourself.
Just not an infographic where you're like,
Don't want sign pollution.
yeah,
Yeah, you're talking about having 8 signs on the property with pictures.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they'd be the smaller educational signs.
Okay.
So we could, I imagine we could put 2 or 3 photos with a small blurb of explaining, this is what the house looks like, built by Pearl and whatever year it was.
did Amber's most recent plan or the consulting group as a whole, I guess. Did it have a suggestion for locations for those signs?
No,
I can't remember. I think so.
so I think it would be kind of what we come up with where they would go.
Okay.
So like water ones would probably be.
Close to the water, view of the water at least. I also think about like where people are gonna be to read them, like by the parking area, that sidewalk or near the house.
Do the Berkman Trail,
Right.
the railroad. There's the Wardour Mansion. And you guys feel like that should be noted in here?
If we could
Like-
see it, I would, but I feel like it's just trying to remember. I just don't think you can see it there. And I don't think many people know what's up there. I only know because my kid knows a kid who lives there. And so I dropped a kid out there. I think that there was a Halloween party they went to. It's pretty fun. But it's an interesting looking house. Drive your car up, like this shouldn't be here. This looks like very 1920s.
It was.
Yeah, I know.
Does it make sense to have a sign of the founding families of Lake Forest Park that were here originally, maybe a picture of their house, if we can find that? Would that make sense to you guys? You know, you mentioned, what was the one you mentioned back here, Morris?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, so that's the preserve.
That's one of the founding, one of the original families, let's put it that way,
Oh,
maybe,
the
were
Morris
they?
family, the Morris family?
yeah. Have they been here the longest or?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
I just know that they own the Blind Creek Water Preserve Park right now.
oh, okay,
They had a house on top of there. So like the viewing dock out there, that's some of the footprint that's like over the stream. The house was on top of the stream. So you
really?
could see the stream run through their house. Yeah. Yeah, not
Wow.
something that would be approved
Yeah.
today.
Okay.
It sounded like from what I've heard, I'll have to dig up I'll send that out to you guys tomorrow. But it sounded like there was a glass like window in one of their floors and so you could just watch the stream in their,
Living room.
yeah.
It was pre-TV, guys.
I'm be watching that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's worth thinking about where those early houses were. I think at least from what I've seen in these books, it looks like a lot of them are right there by that entrance sign, right? And I think the mansion I think that's the one that's still standing. Is, I mean, if you took all the trees down, all the other houses, it's pretty close. See some pictures, it looks pretty close to actually where where Ballinger hits off away. But just I think the way that it's grown up right now, you can't see it very well from the park.
I'll try to come up with 8 families of houses.
Yeah.
And next time we meet, we'll
Cool.
see if it's worth it.
Great.
You know,
I mean, I think the first lens we're looking at is what what do we need to put on signs in the park? Like, and then how does that work with the themes and the sort of the park themes that we're trying to go for, and just the information that we want to provide within the park itself. Then I think there could be a lot of other stuff that we get out of this process that is still interesting and kind of cool. So I don't think your efforts are wasted. I think it's interesting information. And I mean, I've not lived here for 30 years or anything, but I just don't appreciate the history of it. I don't know where to get it. Yes, those books and the Shoreline Historical Society. So how do we get that to people who are just casually walking through your park?
Yeah, like I guess that's a good, like, what history would you want to tell the visitor? Um, about Lake Forest Park? Specifically the waterfront, because that's
Where
where.
the park is.
And keep in mind, we should be editing ourselves on this, because I think when you think about yourself going to a park, thinking about like, I've run into some signs. There's a culvert one over here that I've looked at 3 times and I still don't understand it. But just some of these signs that, you don't spend a whole time on, there's some reason you went to the park, so you want like some way to like limit what you're trying to say.
Yeah, right, the text to be, but
Yeah,
pictures more tell us.
yeah, we don't.
But also not.
Yeah,
As you looked in this book, were these like this one below this picture is what, like, was that 2 sentences?
Yeah,
That seems
2 sentences.
workable. With the paragraphs on that side, I think I would not, if I saw that on the side, I would be, let's skip it, right? So. And maybe I don't mean to put too much pressure on Amber for this as our design consultant. I feel like she's got a pretty good take on this and could give us some guidance on how do you make these things readable.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good. These should be good signs, not annoying signs.
I think she was hammering home with us the less is more idea.
Yeah, this is like, it's not a big property, so
Yeah.
you,
don't want to fill it.
yeah. Yeah, so if you look at the site, you're kind of like, one near the water, one near the building, one near the railroad, and then the preserve.
Keep on there, yeah.
Did I already say the building?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're down to 4, actually.
So that should make it.
I mean, maybe one, sort of between from the deck as you look out toward the park, like there could be something out there. Like, it's not way too much.
Yeah, I think the walk, like the lake too, we could do a recreation and then like history of lowering of the lake.
Yeah.
Like that could be 2 signs. Not next to each other, but. A little bit.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so the next, is it, at this point, is it more of a deeper homework assignment for us all to really take a look at these pictures with those themes in mind?
Yeah.
And think like, what pictures do you like? How should we identify these pictures?
And put them together so they make sense on the side.
Yeah,
Instead of random
yeah,
stuff, and like we're saying, have a theme for each sign,
Mhm.
so it makes sense.
do we wanna,
So I have like 8 topics right now.
okay,
I have water, recreation, railroad, history of the Gates family, history of the people who stayed on site in the cabins, industry of the water, and I have like steamboat / ferry system, lowering of the lake, Morris family. We'll have to look at the preserve a little bit. Indigenous acknowledgement. Say something.
So we could put pictures to these and then edits in there.
I can send out these topics.
I think that'd be great. And maybe we each think about. I mean, choose your own adventure on how you wanna do it, but one thought would be actually put together a little like. What would you think if you had to get okay, find a couple pictures, copy and paste them into whatever, doesn't be perfect, right? Theme on it, and then we'll kind of talk, all those pictures you thought were that theme. Okay. Or if you don't want to do the full on graphic editing, bit of it, just like. Flag them with different color sticky notes, whatever way you do that. I don't know, open to other ideas too, but I think it'd be good to have something to look at.
Are you trying to tell a story with like eight, I'm hearing 8 signs, 8 different themes and 8 different stories about the property?
I think those are the ones that we're at least sort of talking about. I think, I agree. I think that seems like a little high now that I think about it. Where are all these
Can't
spots?
support this.
So, yeah,
Well, the
so,
other question is to think about how many of these signs make sense to have outside and then to have some visual things inside.
yeah,
And how that will go, would we just put them up, or could we think about having a revolving exhibit so that, maybe for 3 months, we'd have
Yeah.
something about the railroad stuff and then take that down and put something else up, so it was changing. That we were able to have, a good number of photographs and information, but not overwhelming. You put 8 signs
Seems like
outside
a lot,
of that park, it would be cluttered and, not inviting at all, so.
If we went through this exercise,
sure.
a lot of things would bubble up,
Yeah.
and then we would self-edit.
Yes.
The ones that look good or,
Yeah.
They'd want to be great or
Yeah.
for whatever, so. But then, yeah, for someone who's more engaged, wants to see something.
yeah, I mean, I could even see, and I like the idea of something in the. Inside the house to like, additionally to look at. I don't love the idea of putting on a Corey, say, to like, do it every couple months.
Yeah.
To recreate
Well,
it,
we could
but we
make,
can just make
form
4,
a committee.
just make 4. And just rotate through.
Yeah. I think
Just
we'll
not poster
also,
boards.
we'll also want, like, art in there, current art that could potentially be for sale or rotating
Yeah.
through with the Shirley Guards Council. They do work with people of rotating art exhibits.
Yeah.
So
Or talk to Debbie, who owns the gallery.
the sky.
Yeah,
Red
let's go.
sky.
So you're getting into, you had a question about.
Oh, yeah, and 8 felt like a lot.
Okay.
This is what I was getting.
I
I went the right
could
direction.
read that in.
Yes,
but
yes.
I think
8
you're right.
felt like.
I think it's good to, I think Steve's plan is right, like, let's look at all of them and like see how they come together, and I think 8 does seem like a lot, like if we can get it down to like 4-ish. Maybe that's a good goal, I don't know, we'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I'll send this list out and then I'll also look at a map and maybe I'll kind of like ping areas. Or see what would kind of come up if that looks reasonable now.
Okay. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, and I like the idea of finding photos that relate to maybe each of these, and then coming back and saying, okay, where do these belong in the park?
Yeah.
Because you're right. There's likely, for some of these pictures and some of these stories, the better place might be in the building to sit and digest it. And then when I'm at the park, something about the lake. So,
Yeah,
Or on the website.
like we're on the website, you know.
Yeah, look how engaged we are here is not gonna be how engaged.
No,
It's a sunny day.
When nobody's reading these signs, so like, I'm hopefully gonna jump in the water.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not a good plan, you get an extra week too, right?
Yeah.
All
April 2nd.
right.
Okay.
Cool, sounds good. Should we move on to the other topic? Which is loaded with opportunity. Maybe I'll throw out there, just a quick little report out of my presentation to city council. Is it
Yes.
a week ago or 2 weeks ago now? I can't remember. It's been 2. And I thought that went well. I mean, it was my typical kind of annual report back to the council about our really looking forward is the idea, but it does have a little bit of a look back as we talk through the work plan and what that looks like and what we're intending with all of it. It's pretty similar work plan to previous, but I think we added one for some updated mapping and talk about parks. So as I talked through, it was like, oh, there are actually a lot of different topics we have going on here. With, of course, this new park being the biggest theme. But there are a bunch of smaller things on that work plan. Including the social media like update about pick a park and do a little park spotlight or something like that. That I feel like we've talked about for a long time. Every once in a while it pops up. Somebody has some enthusiasm for it. But it might be good to kind of think about how we achieve that this year. If there's a goal we want, like,
Maybe even like each meeting, someone can volunteer to have something back to me before the newsletters are due. So
what
if
are
you
the
think,
newsletters do? Are they monthly?
what, yeah, they're monthly, the e-news,
Yeah.
they're monthly. Articles go out the last Wednesday, so they're always due that week before.
Okay.
I kind of call when you reading, but do you have an example of one of them so we can get an idea of like tone?
Yeah,
Like,
I'll dig some stuff up and send it out. I know like our new front desk girl, she, I think grabbed what was on the website and put it in the e-news last time.
okay,
So this could be like a little bit more specific of like you writing an article about the otter.
Yeah,
Animal
yeah,
anchors.
yeah.
It's so, it doesn't have to be the whole park, just something
Yeah, I like that
specific.
actually. Like a piece of the park, even would be pretty
Yeah.
yeah, we could just take a stab. If they'd like, if you'd send that out, I'd be happy to be on the hook for it.
Maybe April will sign
cool. Okay.
and then have an article due a week or two.
I got a trophy.
There you go. Yeah, or maybe if you wanna like bring an article to the next meeting and like everyone can.
Yeah.
Should then give a go, we'll submit that.
Okay.
And do it.
These articles are, I mean, they're a paragraph, right?
Yeah, you
They're
don't,
not long
like-
form New Yorker, like 7-page in-depth analysis. It's
It's not
like,
like a
you got
really
6
good
sentences.
attention grabber picture. And then, yeah. 6
Okay.
sentences, plenty.
I mean, and I would even say we can write them all now and then just sort of dole them out through the year. So maybe that's actually a shorter term project that we just take that on and get a stockpile of them, so we can.
I like the idea too of us featuring one of the parks in the city, because it's astonishing how many people live here that don't know anything about any of the parks, and, you know, we could highlight. They're doing at Grace Cole and have been doing it, 5 Acre Woods, and the plan is there. Just skip right over the Whispering Willows. But
Your favorite.
But, you know,
Yeah.
the Otter Park and Lakers and Blue Heron Horizon View, what's been done up there with the art. I mean, people don't really
Yeah.
are not paying attention. So it'd be nice. And also, I'd be happy to submit those things as we do them in the e-news to the Shoreline Community. So
Oh, great.
she's really good about putting articles in for us, so
Okay.
that would just widen the perception of what we're doing. If you look at the shoreline area, they put a lot of information about what's going on in their city parks in there. Since we don't have that kind of news thing, then we could use theirs. That should be.
Trying to think what else I talked about in that meeting. Also, another theme that I thought, or another activity we did previously was the yoga in parks. And so I think maybe we should start like thinking about how that works for this summer. I think that was a pretty
Do
good.
we know people, yoga teachers who are
That
committed?
is always the issue.
Is it, someone in our neighborhood that has a sign, like a well done sign that says yoga every Wednesday for the neighborhood. So if I reach out to her, she would need to be like self-insured.
Yeah, let
Is that
me,
the highest hurdle or the?
yeah, it's insurance. I'll go back and look at requirements and streamlining the process to get back for next meeting. And then we can maybe do a call for teachers and just schedule like. We'll parameter, like 8 weeks or something, and,
Yeah, it'd be helpful to have those requirements
Yeah.
because before reaching out, I would say like, hey, you do it, and they say yes, and they don't meet the requirements.
yeah,
But this has been the biggest struggle, right? The insurance.
yeah.
And the hurdle seems to be that they need to have a full insurance policy that covers like,
It's
all
usually
sorts
people
of
who have
things.
like their own studio that were qualifying, but. I'll do some background on that and on that next meeting.
Okay.
do we know any insurance people? I feel like the issue.
They're harder to get than yoga people.
Right? Can we get like 1 day insurance for this activity? Because we don't need a whole like annual policy or anything.
If someone is a yoga teacher though, they must have some type of insurance.
That's not real, I
But
think.
sometimes it's the studio insures the,
Activities in the studio.
yeah, like, and so the instructor themselves don't have insurance, it's the studio that umbrellas it. So I'll do some work and we'll see, I'll get that back, but. Definitely wanna bring yoga more to this.
Awesome.
And the last one was a studio owner that had this.
The two that were last doing. Or they didn't have a studio, but I think were traveling, like travel.
Perfect. That's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm trying to remember what else was on that work plan that I talked through. Always pickleball, people love pickleball, so mention that one. And then the major lakefront park project. So that's kind of what I talked about, the city council. And I think they had nice things to say, so I think that will say, well, that's my report out. I want to belabor it, but it's good.
I was there and I witnessed it.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Thanks, man. Oh, yeah, because I had to take back the number of open positions we had, because you had like moments before been approved. So great.
Did we have a budget that was submitted for anything? No.
But I have some budget to burn for this stuff. I have a Port of Seattle Economic Development Grant that I got that basically doubled my events budget.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, now I just need to find time to spend it. But that can help with advertisement of all park events. And I would assume yoga in the park is I'm gonna look at it as an economic development pro something, so,
I mean, the businesses advertise
yeah,
that they do yoga.
maybe there'd be a coffee cart out there, I don't know.
1 day insurance card, that's what we
Yeah.
need.
So yes, that grant plus the budget that mayor and council have passed, we'll be able to do some bigger advertisement, media stuff. Promotion for the events that we currently do have and amp them up a little bit. So,
And I think that's a good question about the budget, because this group doesn't have its own budget.
right,
We advise other groups within our departments. Well, we advise the council, I guess, but we're with you.
yeah, so like you guys give me ideas for events to do.
Okay.
Yoga in the parks is one. Whatever additional fun things you want at picnic in the park. And I want to bring back Paws in the Park this year too.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that at the next meeting, like the
Events,
events calendar for the year, like what's set, what's tentative, what's like what we should do some more work on helping plan.
yeah, so all the bands will be coming back and they're trying to do a youth battle of the bands too. So there'd be a youth one in the summer, earlier summer, and then adult battle of the bands later in the summer.
That sounds fun.
So you're still a beer garden at the youth battle of bands?
I don't know, we'll have to figure that out. Maybe not. Maybe not the youth. But we're gonna be doing the 5K again
Great.
this year too.
Okay.
Mother's Day weekend.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah, you just had a meeting for that?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So yeah. Summer's approaching. Get winter, but summer really.
Just a long waste. All right, any other category comments or topics?
What about, does this group ever have a table at the Green Fair?
I don't think we've done that.
No,
No, we could.
yeah, Green Fair's April 4th. I'll be there. You guys wanna come hang out, more than welcome to. But
Yeah, we've not really done our own parks
Yeah.
board table. Anywhere, if anything, we've kind of been around for the city. Table or booth or whatever you want to call it. And hang out near Corey and her
Sure.
puppy dog.
mostly been for the Lakefront project recently.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea to be represented at all of these events.
Yeah.
And people can come up to the table and ask questions. We could have pictures of each park or something. I think it'd be informative.
Would it be? How do the other boards do it with identifying themselves as board members?
I'd say the,
Name tags or special hats or I don't know.
oh,
Not hats, I'm kidding.
the tree board's really the only one that goes to events.
Okay.
They have a lot of education on trees, is what they're doing. So it's easier for them to bring
Like
education.
a more public facing
Yeah.
activity that they do. Yeah.
Planning commission only if there's like a plan, comprehensive plan or. So. You guys are always welcome to hang out the. City booth, so.
Okay.
We can figure out a way. I think when we update the parks map and trails, like would be a good. Presentation to give to the public.
Could you include some of those public events in the calendar for the year that we look at next time?
Yeah.
And when those could be, or what, if we want to think about which one of us are available, can't all be there, but a couple of us can be, yeah, so.
We can always like,
Shifts.
post a quorum notice to
Oh, okay, yeah,
for special events and stuff.
right. Okay. Good question. Any other thoughts or comments? Before I wrap us up? No public comments, right? That's how, unless they're here live in person, so. Well, I guess that's you today. You're technically
That would be-
public, do you have any comments to make?
So the goal is to come to the next advisory meeting with pictures that maybe match the themes that you'll share with us. Maybe some ideas about where those are going to go at the park. And then to speak on upcoming events for the summer. Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
Great. Okay, well, that sounds great. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to adjourn us. Now, there you go, done. You can stop the recording.